and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski. Back and better than ever, it's Sleepless with Steve. That sounds so weird coming from me. That feels so weird coming from me, you know? But this is Sleepless with Steve. I'm going to boost my microphone here just a little bit.
I'm going to boost you up a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Oh, here he comes. There he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Steve Pulaski has joined. There he is. Steve, say hello to the audience.
What's going on, everybody? Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube, coming to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6 o'clock, 6:30, somewhere around there Central Time. It's good to be with you. Tardy to the party, but good to be with you. And Joe, good to be back and seeing you on screen.
Thank you.
Good to see you, gentlemen. It is good to be back. We didn't really get to talk. I was going to say we did. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, we didn't really get to ask you, Joe. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. Very eventful. My stepbrother proposed to his girlfriend, and she said yes.
Hey.
So that was a very exciting thing to see. And the food was delicious, so I can't ask for more when it comes to Thanksgiving.
Everybody getting cuffed around here. It is cuffing season, capital C, capital S. And it is good to be back, though, on Sleepless with Steve. We got this show and then next week's show, and then we got our Christmas hiatus as well. So this is the time of the year where I graciously give these two non-union but still respected members of the show their deserved holidays off. So we'll be back also next week with a review of West Side Story, which is out Friday, technically tomorrow. And then we'll have three of our favorite Christmas movies tomorrow, next Wednesday as well. And then we got one more show, I think, before the end of the year. Then after that, I think there's one more.
Matrix review.
I think it's New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
we got the Matrix Resurrections, and we got and I'm reviewing the show that premieres tomorrow. And just like that, the Sex and the City reboot. I'll be reviewing that on the last Sleepless show of 2021. These guys were fighting me, but I said, nah, I'll do a solo review. I think they're kind of, I think Dom especially is a little bit peeved about that. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to make you watch the Sex and the City reboot. The boys are upset, but I have to be selfish with the love on that one. But we've got a big movie in its own right today. Dom and I handled Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Oh, that's what you guys reviewed. I was like, man, what movie did I go see in theaters last week? Because I completely forgot about it already.
You know, what would you have given Ghostbusters Afterlife?
2 stars. I was very, like...
Thank you. Somebody else didn't like it either.
Don, did you like it?
Yeah, I was fine with it, but I never really properly was in the Ghostbusters. So I feel like a lot of people are saying this is like Star Wars 7, where it's like, yeah, they just kind of did all the same stuff without as much heart to it. I was like, okay, well, as someone who never watched the first one, this just makes me want to watch the first one then. So
it absolutely is in episode 7 like template. But like the thing was for me is like, as much as I was loving the first half of that movie, the minute they started like actually like, you know, putting on like the proton packs, getting in the car and hunting ghosts, is when like, all right, well, this is just becoming like reference the movie now. And like, yeah, look, sure. I don't know how far you guys went into spoilers. Like, if you haven't seen Ghostbusters Afterlife at this point, you probably don't care. But when the original Ghostbusters,
you've seen the first one apparently.
Yeah. When the original Ghostbusters do show up and the camera just panned over to like, we're here. And I just sat there in the theater like, that's it? That's the grand entrance?
They didn't even do like a fancy, well, I'll stop here, but like they didn't even do like a fancy, like, hey, they showed up in a car and then they come out and put on the
just standing
No, it's
there.
literally like the 3 old men are like around the corner and then the director's like, and action. It's like, okay, we're just going to walk up here with the suit.
Bill Murray's not even playing Peter Venkman. He's just Bill Murray. People have asked me a lot because it is making money. People have asked me, what have I thought of Ghostbusters Afterlife? And I say, there's a goddamn character named Podcast. Draw your own conclusions, okay?
Hey, Joe, is Podcast better than Short Round from Indiana Jones 2?
That's a hard question. I say yes, actually.
Yeah, see?
Yeah. Man, it's a low bar to clear.
It is a low bar.
Is Home Alone 5 better than Home Alone 4? That's...
Sweet Home Alone, is that 5?
Whatever the hell whatever thing got released.
Then
on
no,
Disney Plus.
four is definitely better.
You know, that's a hot take. The one with Missy Pyle, that's a hot take. Oh, geez. We'll move forward. We got a lot of stuff to tackle today. House of Gucci review. We got that. That'll be the big middle part of the show. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is coming out. Part 1 of 2. We will dive into that briefly to end the show. Got some news on that, and I feel like that it is, ahead of Spider-Man, the long-awaited Spider-Man No Way Home coming out next week. So we will touch on the Spider-Man movie. With the new Spider-Man movie coming out next week, let's touch on the Spider-Man movie we're not going to get for 11 more months. So we will do that come the end of the show. But first and foremost, the topic that's keeping this show going, unfortunately, in some respects, is back in the news. This was in the news last week, prior to the interview airing. And Dom and I touched on it briefly at the beginning of the show, if I recall correctly. But there's 2 reasons I didn't want to touch it. 1, the interview hadn't aired yet. And 2, Joe, you weren't here. So there were 2 reasons I didn't want to touch on that interview yet. It was really just breaking news at the time that Alec Baldwin was doing his first interview in the wake of the tragic on-set death of Helena Hutchins on the production of Rust. And now that interview's out with George Stephanopoulos of ABC News. George Stephanopoulos is a really good interviewer, sidebar. He's a really good, accomplished interviewer, always has been. And he gets I don't know if it's an honor or a privilege. You can figure that one out on your own, but he gets the luxury, I suppose, of speaking to Alec Baldwin in Alec Baldwin's first interview since that Rust shooting. And Alec Baldwin, just first things first, even with makeup and in a decent suit, the guy looks really bad. The guy looks like he's had a miserable couple of months, to say the very least, in that interview. In lieu of the tragic accidental death of Helena Hutchins, the cinematographer on Rust. And he's attracted more buzz now. You've seen it pull quoted all over the place. He's attracted more buzz now and more attention on the shooting itself by saying, and I quote, "I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them. Never." He's claiming now that he never pulled the trigger, which is an odd development in an already odd story that is already layered in a lot of mystery that's still yet to be revealed and sort of dispersed in some ways. But again, he sat down with George Stephanopoulos, ABC News, and did his first on-camera interview since. And this claim, again, it adds this other layer of mystery. I mean, we already don't know how and why a lethal bullet got in a prop gun, number 1, on the set of the movie. We don't know that. And number 2, we don't know how and why crew members failed to check the live round before passing it to Alec Baldwin. And now Alec Baldwin claims that he didn't pull the trigger. And his claim has also been backed by the attorney for the assistant director, Dave Halls, who I think we mentioned last time we talked about this. Baldwin has apparently been making the statements since the shooting happened, according not only to Halls, but also Halls' attorney as well. And firearm safety experts, I read an article today. I don't know if you guys wound up seeing this or did your other ancillary external research on the matter, but I was reading some claims by firearm safety experts who are extremely skeptical of the claims. And I don't know thing one about guns. Full disclosure, I don't know much about guns. I've never fired one. I've held one. I got an uncle who's really into guns. I don't know myself much about guns. But with the firearm safety experts, though, a couple of them were saying that the specific model of the gun has 4 spots to hold the hammer in place as it's pulled back. And that is supposed to be the safety mechanism for the gun. They said even if the gun is dropped or even thrown, the structure of the gun makes it very hard to accidentally discharge, very difficult. So that's kind of where the experts stand on it. They're like, it seems like a little bit of an incredulous claim. I don't know why he would posit this and come out and make this the sweeping statement of his interview. I don't know why. unless he truly, I would think that he truly believes he didn't pull the trigger, but I think it's an odd card to pull unless you think that you're really in deep trouble either with the legality or the safety issues that were on set. It adds another layer of mystery, but it's absolutely worth touching on. I'll throw it over to you, Dominic. What say you about the recent developments in this Rust shooting incident?
It kind of shows how bad of a situation is if that's kind of the best public defense he has right now, which is like, I didn't pull the trigger, I was holding the gun, and various other things that leading up to that. If that's, Steve, you said it, as if that's what you're leading with, you're kind of already in a bad, really, really bad position. But the reason why I would go with that, well, it's hard to disprove necessarily. I mean, obviously, yes, there is a small chance, because I think he's trying to push the blame on, this is analysis, by the way, but I think he's just trying to push the blame more onto the armor, or I should say not the armor, the assistant director who handed in the guns. Like, well, it's further down the line is the problem, and the gun must have just malfunctioned, because sometimes you know how technology works, sometimes it just malfunctions on you, which is true, but it's hard to disprove necessarily, because there's no camera footage that you can analyze, or no photos that at least none that we are aware of yet. It's just sad, man. It's just really, really sad to look at, and then to see for someone who's just always been controversial. But it is possible that he truly does believe it, as you said. I know sometimes I find myself fidgeting all the time, but when you have a gun, you should be very active. Your mind should be very active on what the power of what you're holding in your hands. There's the 4 rules of firearm ownership, and one of them, in many cases, if they're ranked, the first rule is I think the first rule is, if you don't point the gun at someone you aren't prepared to shoot at, or something, unless you're prepared to shoot at that thing. Yeah. And then at least the second rule is, don't put your finger on the trigger discipline, right? Don't put your finger on the trigger unless you plan to pull that trigger intentionally. And it looks like he failed at least 2 of those, because obviously the gun had to have been pointing at people for them to have been shot at. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's a sad situation all around. Now we'll see what the official police report. Remind me, did the police report actually say that he pulled the trigger? So I think that's like an opening for him there, is that because unless the police report.
I think because it was just a complicated situation that the police just kind of were like, let's just simplify it and just label it as Baldwin was the one that pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I mean, he was holding the gun. Yeah. All things considered. So yeah, it's hard to say, and it's probably going to get very technical. Now that being said, rich lawyers, or I should not rich lawyers, but probably rich lawyers, but rich people who can afford big lawyers, that's probably their way in, right? Unless you're poor schmucks like us, then any little tidbit of an opening for getting off will probably get you there. Not completely off, he'll probably be sued, and so will the production company. For negligence, but in terms of I don't what would charge with this constitute proper criminal charge with this constitute, I don't know, manslaughter or something, that he'll probably get away with that, not get charged with or not convicted of that, but we'll have to wait and see. Joe, did you have anything?
I mean, just very little, because I'm just kind of on the money with you guys, because again, I mean, even though this is a big story, there's not much more at least for me, I can't really add to it, because it's just another just shocking revelation that's come out from this. It's not even a revelation, it's just weird. I am in agreement with how Steve opened this. It's weird that this is the first thing Baldwin is going to just come out and say since this all went down. And yeah, he did look terrible in the interview as well. But yeah, no, I don't know why you would just be like, I would never point a gun at anyone and pull the trigger. I didn't pull the trigger, and you have firearm experts, saying and yeah, those guns, I as somebody who I've taken gun safety classes, I own a firearm ID. I know how dangerous this stuff can be, and I also know how much safety is put into these things. to make in case of a misfire were to go off, there's like a bunch of ways that it just won't. And like
you're talking on the production line.
Yeah, and even on production line aspect too. Like I know that and I'm waiting to see how this goes out because I'm looking at the NPR article because unfortunately one of the ones that we're gonna use I have to pay a subscription to. But a what's it called? An investigation actually went down. A search warrant was given to the police to go check out what is it? PDQ Arm and Prop LLC, the company in Albuquerque that provides guns and dummies and to movie sets. But like they even mention how like the movie sets that they provide them to are like movies like Rust. You're straight to Redbox, straight to Netflix, like not even Netflix like originals, like just straight to Netflix stuff. So I'm wondering is it really just come down to like these straight to DVD like movies, like they just don't have the safety really on set for crew, cast, anybody out there because it's just like, well, this ain't your big budget, it's gonna be in theaters or streaming original film, so who cares? Like, let's just get it done, make our money and go. So if that's the case, well, look what happened now over this.
That's an interesting development there that I didn't know. That I didn't read that part of it, that they looked in. I mean, it's not surprising in that regard, but that this particular Albuquerque-based company is providing firearms for like mid-tier projects. Because I was openly shocked. I think I mentioned it in the past segment we talked about this. I was shocked that this movie was like $6 to $7 million just to begin with. It seemed that budget seemed high for me just looking and reading about what I have read about the production. But
no, go on.
It's intriguing. It's intriguing in that way too. I mean, it's not surprising they looked into the supplier of the firearms too, but it's interesting the conclusion you draw there that is it a wider epidemic of safety regulations on movies that, I mean, we already know about the union problems and the crew member problems and the walkouts with this thing.
Even suppliers too. So I mean, like, where's that go to?
Supplier issue. It could be a supplier issue too. Now, this story is going to leg it deep into next year, too, as far as it's not, because we still don't have a full-on investigation report. Not that I'm expecting one. Probably not one until the beginning of the year, till the beginning of the new year. But we still don't have that, and that's even going to wind up being controversial, I feel, too.
Yeah.
Anything else to add on that, or are we moving forward?
It's just sad, man. That's all I got to say. It's just real sad.
As the one big thing, every time something comes out, it's just like, this gets even, I want to say like dumber, but it just gets more ludicrous as like how unchecked everything was with this whole situation.
Yeah, and my heart continues to break for Helena Hutchins' husband and son.
Yeah.
My heart because this has got to be miserable. I mean, on top of the loss of your mother and wife, on top of that, to have this story constantly in the headlines and constantly being debated by schmucks like us and on social media and such, like, it's got to be hard. Like, and I don't know how you can escape that, or how you're going to escape that, at least in the next year. It's painful. We shall move forward, though. We shall move forward and touch on House of Gucci, the origin story of Joe's relative.
Yes! Italian Dune!
Yeah, so Joe's ancestors get their origin story in House of Gucci. That's why he always wears the nice clothes and has the nice headset over here, too. Oh, man. You got to find yourself a nice woman named Patrizia. You got to find yourself I'm not saying a person like that, but with that name, and make sure she's got a sister, preferably older for Steve. Moreover, though, House of Gucci. This movie, Ridley Scott's new movie, first off, Ridley Scott's second movie to be released this year, Last Duel, was also out this year, which I really want to see.
You haven't seen it?
That was a movie I had no interest in seeing when it was out. but seeing, I don't even know if you can call it critical reevaluation. It just seemed like Disney had no interest in promoting it, so I didn't even watch it. But now a lot of critics that I like and respect have included it on their favorite films of the year list.
I don't want to spoil my list. It's on there. It's a damn good movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm going to watch that movie. I'm going to try to watch it before I make my list, The Last Duel. And I think that's an origin story of Boston because it's got Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. But anyway, I'm pretty pumped to watch that one, though. But this is Ridley Scott's other movie, the one that I think was more into being, promoted at least this year. And Joe, when we've talked about it, I think this was the show you missed, Dom, when we talked about our most anticipated films of 2021. This was one of them. This was one. I was gonna say, I don't know if I had it on my list, Joe, but I know you had it on yours.
It was, it was on mine. It was not on yours, but you did say you were also very much looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And you had a good point, too, because you said this movie's kind of got something for every generation, despite it being R-rated. You've got Adam Driver, who, thanks to girls and a lot of other roles, has appealed to a bit of a younger class, as does Lady Gaga. And Adam Driver does kind of skew older, too. You got Al Pacino for the grandparents, too. You got Jared Leto for the art majors. You know what I mean? So, like, you have something for everybody in this movie. But it's not great. It's not bad. It's not great. It's not great. And that's probably the most disappointing part about it, because the stage was set for this thing to be really good.
Oh my God, yeah.
And for it to be underwhelming like it is feels worse than it probably ultimately is. I called it in my review, which you can read at stevepulaski.com. I called it in my review, it's camp without much of a personality. And for a movie that is this opulently decorated, it doesn't it feels so calculated. Plot-wise, performance-wise, it feels so uninspired in that regard. Yeah. This movie needed, I'm not saying it needed to be as showy as The Wolf of Wall Street, but it needed more of that energy for a story as wild as it was.
I know, like, Dom, did you get to see Last Duel?
I did not see Last Duel. Okay. I was actually going to bring that up, but if it's in relation to Ridley Scott's past slate of more recent films, but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say this movie was the complete opposite of what I saw with Last Duel. I went to go see it. So to give you context, when we did our top 10 list, or not top 10, when we did our most anticipated list, I didn't see Last Duel at the time, but it was like on its way out of theaters, and there was 2 showtimes left one night. It was a 6:45 and a 10 p.m. show, and I went to the 10 p.m. show, and I'm like, that's screw it. I got nothing else better to do tonight. Like, I'll check it out. And I left the theater, and I went, damn, dude, House of Gucci is going to be insane. No, Last Duel is the complete opposite of House of Gucci. Both films are overly long, but Last Duel has way more to say. It has a way better story. It's just made better in general, and the performances to me are significantly, like, way better. House of Gucci, to me, this is like the biggest budgeted soap opera I've ever seen. Like, yes. the way the trailers made this look out to be is that this was gonna be like a drama with crime and, like, a murder mystery maybe to it or something. It's there. It's just not really what the movie is. When I say soap opera, I mean it is soap opera. And performance-wise, I was thrown off by this movie. I look, I get it. Doing accents is hard, but, like, why the hell is Jared Leto doing like his best Mario impression in this movie? Why is everybody doing a different Italian accent in this movie? Yes. Why? Like, Lady Gaga, everybody's been criticizing Lady Gaga. I'll say this: I did watch the interviews with actual the woman that she does portray, and if you watch those interviews, Gaga is on point. It still sounds weird, but at least she's on point. Jeremy Irons.
It's a little bit more Russian. It's a little bit more Russian.
It is a bit more Russian, yeah. Jeremy Irons didn't even try. Adam Driver is pretty good with his. Like I said, Al Pacino. And Al Pacino and Lady Gaga are Italian. I'm still just kind of like, why are you putting it on so thick? And then lastly, yeah, Jared Leto, my guy, dude. Like every time I'm just like, you know what, like maybe he is a great actor. And, I give him crap for that Joker role, and every once in a while I joke about it. But I'm like, no, overall Jared Leto is a great actor. Like, I mean, even the movie I hated at the beginning of this year, The Little Things, I'm like, he was the best part about it. Well, here he's the worst thing about House of Gucci. It's like, okay,
the guy has never found a performance he can't overdo. He's quickly becoming. I'll renege too. He's quickly becoming one of my least favorite actors, Jared Leto. He really is.
Like there were moments where like I just, for the wrong reasons, I looked forward to him coming back on screen. Just because I wanted to hear his accent. Like, it's just like...
Did somebody tell him that the Super Mario Brothers movie is already cast?
Oh, my God.
I feel bad for Paolo Gucci because even Patrizia, the real-life Patrizia, who's still alive, even said he was not that big of a moron.
No, he wasn't. And you look at pictures of him, he did not look that, like that, like, I don't know what the hell they did with him. They gave him a bald cap, and he was like, he did not look like that at all.
He seemed like he was a little eccentric, a little bit of an odd duck, but he wasn't 52 cards short of a deck like Leto portrays him to be. He wasn't like, 4 tires short of a car over here.
Yeah.
So I felt bad. Even watching this movie, I was thinking like, God, I hope Paulo's dead. I hope he's not watching this. I'm like, I really hope not. And I mean,
he is dead. At the end, they say he died in 1995, I think, or something like that.
They do during the. I was thinking during it. I was thinking during the confrontation scene between him and Patrizia and Driver in that scene. I was thinking, I'm like, God, I hope he's dead. Long story short, I'm not going to touch on him much more. Leto thinks he's Marlon Brando. The guy ain't even walk fiend. And with that, I throw it over to Dom.
Yeah. So with a movie about power, money, greed, and crime, all within a family and family politics too, there's two like general approaches. It seems like either a restrained epic like The Godfather or a wild roller coaster like Wolf of Wall Street. Steve, I'm glad I'm kind of vindicated on that thought. House of Gucci, it feels like it's trying to be more Godfather, but winds up being more All the Money in the World, in that it's so sanitized. It doesn't nail any of those epic moments where like, hey, this is the moment where this happens. None of that at all. And it winds up being so restrained, so clean, so sanitized, not in terms of content, but just in its approach. It's like, can someone light a fire under someone's ass here? This is the world of fashion. This is the world of freaking fashion. Like Versace got assassinated too. Like there's interesting things happening here. Like people are doing lines.
Why is The Devil Wear Prada a much edgier movie than The House of Gucci?
Yeah, what the hell, dude?
Damn.
That's
a statement, and I kind of agree with it. I mean, and Ridley Scott directed All the Money in the World too. That approach worked for that movie. I really liked All the Money in the World. That approach worked for it, given the tone of the story and given the attitude of J. Paul Getty.
Because it's old money. I mean, granted, okay, Gucci is also old money, but like J. Paul Getty was what, oil, I think. Yeah, it was like fossil fuels. Like that is old, like Rockefeller, freaking money.
And the guy was only like 108 years old in and of himself too. You know what
exactly.
I mean? So it was and he was curmudgeon, not here.
This is freaking Gucci. This is the world of fashion. And you saw a glimpse of that. You saw glimpses of that, but you never really reveled in it. You never really enjoyed it. You never rode the highs like you do in Scarface or Godfather, right? It's just like we're just muddying about. And it's so frustrating. I was really disappointed, really frustrated with this movie. I don't buy into hype often. And I really wasn't hyped about this movie. But when I saw this movie and I was like, okay, cool. Our first shot is Lady freaking Gaga walking in slow motion, looking hot as hell. It's like, okay, here we go. We're in for a good time. None of that really materialized. The performances here are okay. Yeah, sure. We'll give, we'll talk some smack about Jared Leto again, but for the most part here, like they are capable. They are capable. Like Adam Driver and Lady Gaga, that could not have been more perfect casting, at least for the characters they're trying to portray.
Absolutely.
Lady Gaga, self-explanatory. Maurizio Gucci. It's like, okay, if I don't know anything about the real life Maurizio Gucci, but if he's like supposed to be cold, calculating, kind of a sociopath to a degree, it's like, okay, cool. Then Adam Driver is absolutely your guy for this. Al Pacino, okay, you want big and boisterous, someone who can be commanding and old there too. Fine. Jeremy Irons is doing kind of like an old actor routine. Yeah, where it's like, old and curmudgeon. Like, yeah, okay,
he's more failed by the writing. He's more failed by the writing.
And here's what I said to Chelsea, because Chelsea and I actually saw this because she was drawn in by Gaga. And it's like, it's not even so much that this script was butchered. It's more so I wish Ridley Scott or whoever did the screenplay here, which was Becky Johnston Becky Johnston and Roberto Bentavenga. I wish they had butchered this. By that, I mean like literally cutting stuff out here. It's like, this is 2.5 plus and then some change. My goodness. Did we really need to spend that much time, talking about, hello, cat. Fine, whatever. Did we really have to spend this much time going into the father Gucci and son Gucci, like having back and forths about should he marry her or whatever? It's like, I'm going to do this or that. And I could go on and on about specific examples, but really, it's like you could have cut this out dramatically and get to the spicy stuff here. I understand you need to do some exposition, some like here's the reason for X and Y, but you can't really so much squander all the time that you had. And look, I'll say
this right here with your cat's more entertaining than some of House of Gucci right here. I know, right? Kidding.
Let me say this. I appreciate how, so spoiler, Maurizio Gucci gets got in this movie. He gets ventilated, right? Spoiler for real life history. But it's like, okay, you did the murder and then you cut to the end where Patrizia is found guilty of murder. I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine. We didn't need to do a whole murder mystery thing of like, how she got caught or how the whole thing unraveled. Save that for a Netflix documentary. That's perfectly fine. Could you not have done that for like a lot of this? Yeah. It's like, it is so melodramatic. There's so much wasted time here. Really, I feel like it's maybe not even whole scenes, but just pacing, just overall scenes, minute by minute. Can we light a fire under the ass of this movie? I said it once before, and I'm gonna say it again there. And yeah, dude, it's that's why I was asking, like, for like apparently Last Duel. Joe, would you recommend Last Duel?
I highly recommend. Let me be straight too. Last Duel is even like a little bit longer, but Last Duel is more entertaining. The way the story is told in that movie, it's told from 3 different perspectives, and each perspective gets better than the last. And it's just cool. like, oh my god, like this is so cool. And like, yeah, when you get to the duel at the end of the movie, it's great, man. It builds up tension perfectly. This has, like I said, everything this movie does is the opposite of Ridley Scott's other movie that came out a month earlier.
That's wild to me.
I wish, like, it's crazy looking at Ridley Scott's past 6 years of movies. House of Gucci, Last Duel, All the Money in the World, Alien Covenant, and The Martian? Ridley Scott directed The freaking Martian? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That doesn't feel right considering those other movies that I listed. Are you crazy? Ridley Scott directed that? I'm not too good with
And don't forget Ridley that Scott. Time like 2 weeks after that came out when people thought The Martian was a true story. That was fun. That was funny.
No,
I'm serious. Don't you remember that? Am I crazy?
Yeah.
Like there was actual, like people thought that people probably still think that was a true story about him living on Mars and cultivating agriculture and stuff.
Okay, let me say this. Looking at it now and comparing it with Ridley Scott's other work here at least on his Wikipedia page. Maybe it's not a comprehensive list. I apologize, but it's like, honestly, The Martian. The statement here really should be The Martian sticks out more than House of Gucci is the exception, because like honestly, House of Gucci and All the Money in the World, there's a direct line there that makes perfect sense in terms of how this turned out.
Yeah.
But you're right, Steve, all the money in the world, that approach makes sense. Even so many beats of this are similar. So much of the style is similar. It takes place in Italy. Rich people are getting screwed over. It has the same, it feels like they almost have the same filter, right? I don't know the cinematographer on both of those movies, but color palette and stuff, kind of that washed out light gray. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Saturated, kind of inky.
Joe will know this Fallout 3 vibes.
Oh,
Fallout 3 look.
Green fucking lens.
But it's like,
Nerds.
yeah, dude, House of Gucci is not the approach to take with that. You needed more like, it doesn't need to be full on Wolf of Wall Street. Not every movie needs to go.
No, because if you do that, like, tons
debauchery.
of movies try to be like Wolf of Wall Street, and a ton of them fail at that.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
Well,
but
what you have here, though, is a movie that with a lot of sensationalism, and you have a script that is like defiant in pursuing virtually any comedy or any sense of like, almost like sit back and let the characters take hold from here. Any kind of that in favor of just this really calculated, measured, beat by beat sort of structure that kind of just like perfunctorily arrives at certain things.
Yeah.
Like there is no suspense. I mean, Dom already, you know, like I said, I mean, I know it's a true story and stuff. So, I mean, spoiler territory is kind of vague here in and of itself. But like when you get to the climax too, there is no suspense from when she orders the hit on Maurizio Gucci to the inevitable murder. There's no suspense. And on top of that too, you have a character who's kind of on the periphery is Selma Hayek's psychic character.
Thank you. Yeah.
Who's on the periphery of the entire movie. And then at the end, 2 hours in, 2 hours and 15 or some odd minutes in, she becomes an integral to the climax and setting the plan into motion. And it's like she is even more useless than Jeremy Irons' character up until this point when the movie decides, oh, she's vital here. You know, she's
it comes out of nowhere. It comes out of nowhere. And like, I mean, let me tell you, the scene where they're planning the hit, not planning the hit, but rather hiring the hitman. That was a fun scene.
Yeah.
Could we get more of that? Like maybe we don't need again, we know Gucci dies. That's not a big surprise there, but it was a pretty famous murder up there with Versace, but like, just make it fun, bro. Like this is, you have Lady Gaga consistently showed throughout the movie. This can be fun. This can be like dramatic in a fun and engaging way, but instead it just gets boring as hell.
It's the 80s. Make it fun.
We'll dive into this. We'll kind of lead to closing arguments after the Zoom sponsored intermission here. But I do want to touch on some positives of this movie, because I will say for a 2 hour and 40-minute movie, I'm not giving a tremendously positive review. I personally wasn't bored through this thing. I really wasn't. My attention was kept throughout the whole thing. And normally when I give a movie kind of a less than stellar score or a less than stellar review, and it's longer than 2 hours and 15 minutes, the length usually is one of my main complaints, or a pretty significant complaint. I don't think this was too long per se.
Yeah.
My ass wasn't numb by the time the credits rolled, as I like to say.
I agree, but it's like, it's infuriating. It's like, piss me off under 2 hours. Don't piss me off 2.5 hours, making me dream of what could have been, you know?
I wasn't so much as pissed as I was disappointed, but we will pick up with this because there are a few points I still want to make, and we will talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse coming up soon. We're taking a brief Zoom-sponsored intermission here. It's Sleepless with Steve. We'll be back with more movie coverage and more of the show in just a few short minutes. Thank you for watching. Back and better than ever. Shout out Zoom, which is Zoom-sponsored intermission. It's Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. I still want to say Twitch. We haven't been on Twitch in a cup of coffee and a sweet roll, but it still is wanting to come out every time I say this. We're talking House of Gucci, though, and we left off kind of talking about the length. I was disappointed by this movie. There's no getting around that. But at the same time, though, I didn't really feel that it was too long. I wouldn't feel bored, I should say, by it. And I think a lion's way to why I felt like that is because I do think Gaga and Driver are very good here. I think they're very good. I think they have an interesting opposites attract sort of chemistry. And saying this is going to say a lot, but I think Adam Driver gives maybe his most like calculated and understated performance yet in this movie. Like he is just very, very cut and dry in a lot of this movie. Not over the top at all. And he's not really an over the top actor, so I don't think that's a shock. But he was very mellow with this. And I think it's brought out just because Lady Gaga is so consistently flamboyant. What say you, Joe, about Gaga and Driver as the central performances? No. I think that's what really kept me more engaged with this movie the longer it went on.
Look, I said this when we did our top 3, most anticipated movies of the year, but I'm going to show it right now on screen. But when I saw that photo on Twitter of them in the winter, like lodge area, like dressed up as the people they are portraying, I said, that's it. That's perfect casting right there. And I will still hold that true. To me, this came down to it's great casting. They are doing as good as they can. It's just the story here is not really supporting me, like, being really entertained. And the script is also not serving them any favors as well. Because it is a lot of scenes just, like I said, they're just like, as Dom said, actually, they're melodramatic. And as I said, they're reminding me a lot of a soap opera. They are great. They are one of the best parts about the movie, along with the costumes and, the fashion. And, God, for God's sakes, the costumes better be good if you're called House of Gucci. All right? The fashion in this movie, it's 80s fashion. 80s fashion was just crazy and weird and cool. And the cinematography is great, too. Ridley Scott always does a great job with that as well. When you see Last Duel, there's some really good cinematography in that film as well.
I've never had a movie, not to interrupt you, but with like The Last Duel, I cannot remember the last time a movie I was so quick to dismiss in theaters, and then just 2 months later I was like, damn it, I missed it, I can't wait to see it.
I don't blame you. I was the same way too. I was like, I'll see House of Gucci, I'll wait for this to come to home video. But then everybody word of mouth was just getting around about the movie, like, yeah, it's great. And then you have Ridley Scott having old man yelling at the sky moments here on the internet, being like, damn, millennials didn't support my movie. I'm like, well, I got your back, Ridley, hold on. This to me, as strong as I started this review, let me rest assured that I am feeling more the same that Steve is. But you got to understand too, this was in my top 3 most anticipated movies for the rest of this year. Even at the start of this year, this was one of the movies I was looking at and I was like, dude, I can't wait for this. I love seeing greedy people in biopics and seeing actors like Gaga, Driver, Leto perform like this. Because Gaga, yeah, she's very flamboyant. Leto is over the top. And it's if you could get the right combination like Knives Out did with their actors, Michael Shannon, we know him as an over the top great actor though, and he's perfect in Knives Out. And it's just damn, maybe I went into this movie expecting the same level of care and effort that everybody had when doing Knives Out. And it just wasn't that. And I know Knives Out is a fictional story compared to, this one. But still, I wanted something like that.
You're Italian. How could you not? It's about your ancestors.
Exactly. Come on. I go to Thanksgiving and these conversations are wilder and crazier than this movie, man.
Dom, I don't know if you want to, kind of parlay into your closing arguments there, Joe. You're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I'll finish up, actually. Yeah, for sure. Let me just do this real quick.
Just a good prelude.
No, and I can give my star rating too.
Go for it.
For me, this was the movie I was very excited about around the holiday season. Yeah, I know. I got Spider-Man. I'm a big Spider-Man fanatic. And The Matrix is coming back, and I've been looking forward to that as well. Kingsman 2. When Steve brought it up, and now West Side Story. But this, I was just yeah, man. I love me some good greedy Italian killing, like drama here. Like I'm just like I cannot wait to see this in theaters, and it just wasn't that. And I'm not trying to like go into this movie like wanting it to be the movie I wanted. I'm open to whatever Ridley Scott wanted to do and tell with this story. It just sucks that what he ended up doing with this story, I've seen played out many times, and he did nothing interesting or on his own here. And again, I hate to keep harping on this, but he did so much better with The Last Duel. So if you want to see a good Ridley Scott movie this year, go see The Last Duel. If you want to see a great biopic this year, go watch King Richard on HBO Max. That's a great biopic.
Jeremy Irons would approve.
Star rating?
Give me a star rating? Two stars.
2 stars. Okay. Dominic, your closing thoughts on House of Gucci.
Devil's in the details, man. This had I wasn't even that hyped for it, but just watching the movie, it's self-evident that this had all the makings of being something really, really awesome and engaging and fun, and conniving and whatever. But none of that gets highlighted. Instead, it's all buried under this, literally buried under this sad-looking filter, but also just clinically here by the script that no one apparently wanted to cut anything from. They all thought that was necessary. So I think it really falls on the. And we can harp on Jared Leto for the memes all we want, but ultimately, it's the screenplay. Ridley Scott is to blame here too, and just the lack of wanting to, just the lack of not respecting the audience's time, making us think that all these people are important in their own way, but instead it feels like the opposite of that. Instead, we get bored might be too strong of a word for it, but just kind of a not being economic with that time and not making it as powerful as it is. I'm harping really hard on it using these big fancy words, but really it's more so just disappointment more than anything. That's what gets me riled up more than most, is that but we've seen much worse, particularly this year. But ultimately, just two out of 4 stars.
I'm actually going to incorporate a half here because Gaga, Driver, and certain moments were enough to get it to 2.5 out of 4 stars for me. And the fact, too, that I like I said, I find myself engaged enough with the story, but it's hard not to come away from this movie, given the promotional aspects, given the narrative in itself, given the litany of generationally gifted actors on display here. I don't care what anybody says. Like, people want to still say Lady Gaga's not an actress. Like, she's done 2 major movies, and she's been in both of them the best part. Like, so I'm not ready to crown Lady Gaga as the next queen of acting, but I'm ready to say that I'd love to see her in more. And I'm the least shocked that she's as good as she is. I'm not shocked in the least that she's as talented as she is. But it was fitting ultimately that House of Gucci came out over Thanksgiving, because it was set to be like the full course meal. But it's mainly just a feast for the eyes in most respects, and it's a lot of empty calories. And that's the most disappointing thing about it all. And again, Dom, I brought it up at first, and Dom echoed my points in a really thoughtful way. Not every movie has to be Wolf of Wall Street, and not every movie can be Wolf of Wall Street. But there's an edginess that movie confirmed is pretty good. There's an excessiveness to that movie. And your mileage varies. Wolf of Wall Street, too, you could argue that it is too excessive. But there's a mileage of that makes it not only faithful, but also adds to the character development and the era in itself. And I think that is a missed opportunity. This tries to be all the money in the world, which is not only a much better movie, but a movie that's tone was justified more than adopting it here. So it's 2.5 out of 4 stars for House of Gucci for me, which honestly feels, I'm not going to lie, and I'm sure you two feel like this too, because you both gave it 2 stars. Doesn't that feel like 1.5 for a movie that's this status, at least? I know, Dom, that you didn't anticipate as much as Joe or even myself, but it just feels like a real big come down. It's probably one of the top 5 most disappointing movies of the year.
Yeah, if we do
not
that
bad,
list,
just disappointing.
If we do that list, this is like maybe number 1 for me.
it wouldn't crack my top 15 worst of the year, maybe even top 20 worst of the year. I don't think I'd even go that far. No. I think I'd have a hard time saying 20 movies I'd categorically dislike this year, but it wouldn't make my top 20 worst list. But it's again, like your mother used to say, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And that hurts worse. That hurts worse than any backhand, doesn't it? You know, you'd almost rather just be grounded and have for 2 weeks as opposed to your mother or father saying they're disappointed in you. I have some unchecked childhood trauma. I'll deal with that later. Anyway, moreover, this will be a quick topic, I feel like. And we did start early too, so it's not even really like we're ending really sooner than we do, or less than an hour. But Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is coming out. Let's talk about the Spider-Man movie, not the one coming out in less than 2 weeks. Let's talk about the one that's not coming out for another 11 months. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's all over the news, only it's not only No Way Home, because we did get a gift of some good news and some really good stills and some really good artwork too, because that's going to be the story of this movie going forward, at least until it's released. And even after it's released, it's just the art style of this movie, of these Spider-Verse movies. And I think the shocking revelation of this whole thing was that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is going to be a part one of two-part movie. There's also a movie focused on a female character, a spinoff that's going to come of this as well. But as far as Across the Spider-Verse goes, we got a 2-part animated Spider-Man movie on our hands, guys, and I'm pretty stoked too, because the character that they're going to focus on in this alternate universe is going to be Spider-Man 2099, which, Jesus Christ, like, that's a name in and of itself, is going to be voiced by Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
And that's dope, man. That is dope. Look at him. He came from in the animated world. He was Gomez in the Addams Family movies. And look at him now. Look at our boy now. You know, he's going to be voicing Spider-Man 2099 in this new Spider-Man movie. And Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the other thing to note, they're working with comic book artist Chris Anka on this too, who I actually know of. He's done a handful of contemporary X-Men issues and a couple of contemporary Captain Marvel issues as well. So the art style is going to be largely handled, obviously, by Lord Miller and the Legion of Animators, but it's going to have a lot of input from Chris Anka, who's a very popular contemporary comics artist.
There's also like the cool thing I read about this was that each universe that they go to, because instead of like, the first film is the universes come to Miles. This time Miles going in the universes because, sequel. But each universe is going to have its own art style, which I'm like, dude, already, I love the art style in the first film. And if you can just enhance that even more, I'm so down. Not to cut you off too much longer here, but the one thing that has me really excited is Kemp Powers is directing this movie, along with 2 other people, but he's directing it. And after One Night in Miami and Soul, I'm so down to see more Kemp Powers stuff.
That's an excellent point. That was honestly going to be my one final point too. Kemp Powers too. Again, he worked on Soul, and Soul was the first movie to be co-directed by an African-American in Kemp Powers too. And Kemp Powers also was the executive producer on One Night in Miami as well. I know not an animated movie, but still a significant movie of the last year, to say the least. Yeah. So yeah, that's the other name I wanted to mention with this too, is don't sleep on Kemp Powers. He is his stock is one of the fastest rising stocks in Hollywood now, I would say, up there with, like, we talked about his movie a couple weeks ago, James Samuel, who did The Harder They Fall. And I think Powers is going to bring a lot to this movie, especially after Soul. I think the sky's the limit on that. Anything else you want to add, Joe? The floor is further yours. I know you're the resident Spider-Man fan, and I'm, I would say maybe about 15 paces behind you in my love for Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Verse to me, it's, out of all the Spider-Man movies, it's, to me, I say it's the best one. I love it a ton. I think it captures, yeah. I think it captures like what it means to be Spider-Man perfectly. I'm so glad they didn't do a Peter Parker storyline again, because Miles Morales was a better idea to do this with. And lastly, too, the reason why it's also my favorite one is because they decided to make it an animated film. And to me, like, comic book movies, they should go more towards the animated route. And I'm not even talking about like your straight to DVD like DC animated films. No, I mean, like, put this in theaters, make it as serious as they did with Spider-Verse. But instead, like, we still get stuff like DC Superhero Dogs is going to be the one going to theaters. But, the DC animated Suicide Squad movie that's been better than all the other Suicide Squad movies is found in the Walmart bin for $2. So okay, that's fair. The last thing I want to say is this: is that if the movie, like, you know, they're gonna get weird with it, they're gonna get like cool with the visuals, and like, you know, all three of these directors that are attached have done something like that with Avatar: The Last Airbender, with Joaquin Dos Santos, Justin K. Thomas. He's worked with the Phil Lord and Chris Miller before with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and plenty of other stuff, and he's done SpongeBob as well. So you want to talk about weird and goofy, he's got that down. And Ken Powers, I mean, you want to talk about cool weirdness. I mean, Soul was just a cool looking film when it got weird. So I can't wait for the visuals, and I can't wait to see what Spider-Man show up. I hope to get like weirder with the Spider-Man that show up in this movie. I want like Japanese Spider-Man and Italian Spider-Man and like all the other like weird like off-brand Spider-Man just to show up.
You make a great point. Before I end with you, Dom, you'll send us home on this one. I want to add to that too, because I never watched a ton of those like DC animated films, or even those like Marvel straight to DVD, direct to video animated films. I watched a couple of them though.
Yeah.
And it always sucked, in my opinion now too. Like, and I'm kind of hoping Spider-Verse reverses course on this too, is that it loans some respectability to the animated comic book movie. Because again, there's always been this perception, and I know I'm not entrenched in this genre even to your extent, Joe, but there's always been this perception that those animated movies are like second tier, and they're not all amazingly good. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
But there's an artistry, and there's a narrative element to those. And ultimately you can just do more in animation than you can obviously do in live action. And with the copious amounts of special effects these movies use anyway, like I've always just kind of lamented the fact that they've never embraced that until really recently, of even the thought of doing an animated movie. And when you bring a movie like this that looks like a real life comic book, is on the short list Into the Spider-Verse, is probably on the short list of like one of the three movies. Like I think you could put Waking Life on there, the Richard Linklater movie. Sin City wasn't animated, but it still has a comic style. But like those two, of like a movie that really got the comic style down on lock and key.
Yeah.
And I think there's a future in this that I hope is recognized, especially now with all the capital of Marvel and DC to take bigger risks. All that being said, Dom, your thoughts on this? You don't have to rush, but you will send us home on this topic.
Honestly, all I want to do is just accentuate how the Spider-Verse movies, these Miles Morales animated movies, they're just pushing the envelope in terms of the art, the discipline of animation. Whenever I like to explore different disciplines, not practically like doing them. I don't know how to draw for crap, but like just like the history of animation, how things are made, just stuff to tickle my brain. And animation is definitely one of them. And whenever I look into that world, peer into that world, Spider-Verse is consistently mentioned. Along there with, Miyazaki's work, Walt Disney's original works there, and just things that are pushing the envelope or innovating, works of art. Every frame is a painting, kind of look into these things, and Spider-Verse is definitely one of them. And I'm just glad that, it's being not only artistically successful, but commercially successful, Oscar winning, successful. These are movies, and I have no doubt this next one too, just from that 2-minute trailer alone. Yeah, dude, they're gonna blow our minds, and they're gonna blow our senses once again in the best way possible. And I just love it when a discipline or any kind of art has that mainstream, all-encompassing recognition. It brings a tear to your eye. It's good to see. And this is stuff that is going to inspire animators for years to come, without a doubt. And I'm just happy to see it. So, and I'm hyping it up. I'm trying not to be a hype man, but if it's anything like that first one, even a little bit, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that movie, like, I know everybody that year was like, dude, Avengers Infinity War was the best comic book movie. I said, okay, all right. Like, why don't you take your, go back to the theater and watch Spider-Verse real quick.
Yeah, that was such a fun theater experience, man. It was a great crowd that I remember seeing it with as well. And I cannot wait to review that movie. If God's willing and the creek don't rise, with two of my favorite men with whom to talk movies. That's our show tonight, Sleepless with Steve. We're back next week reviewing West Side Story. I just watched the original yesterday, actually. I just watched the original. It was a good time. And probably to dabble into thoughts on that as well. But we're going to watch the new Steven Spielberg movie. His first Spielberg movie since The Post, gentlemen. The first Spielberg movie since we were on the radio doing Sleepless with Steve. So Spielberg's back. We'll be seeing that probably this weekend or next week and dive into the review of that and also list some of our favorite Christmas movies in lieu of the big holiday coming up in just a couple of weeks. Great to have you back, Joe. Really looking forward to talking West Side Story with both of you next week. Thank you for once again running the show as efficiently and as effectively as you always do, my friend. I think I speak for Dom when I say it's good to have you back. Highlights will be posted on this YouTube channel on which you're watching the show. They'll also be accessible at stevepulaski.com along with other archive clips and my written film reviews. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.